I'm doing good. Hey, everybody.
We have some people already here with us, and we want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Precious, um, for accepting to support Taller and accepting to talk about fashion more than just the style. Um, so thank you. Let's wait a little moment
Okay.
and we can start talking about you and about how we got here.
Okay.
Um, in the meantime, remember, El Fashion Show is our spirit fundraiser, and we do a fashion show, intergenerational fashion show with all the community, in which we present kids, the elders, the youth, and we have all levels of fashion designers. We have Buenas Vibras this year. We have Las Divas del Monte. We have Nasheli, Juliana, and we have a special edition for Pangaya from Roberto Lugo. So we hope to see you there and to have a great night of fashion and fun. So, Precious, I want to introduce my dear friend. Before everything, she's my dear friend, my mentor, Precious Lovell. She's an artist, designer, maker, an educator, a historian. Is so many things that we can find on Precious Lovell. She holds a master's degree in art and design with fibers and surface design concentration. Her sociocultural creative practice explores the narrative potential of cloth and clothing through textile and garment-based art. Her mixed media pieces often integrate traditional textile techniques with newer technologies and, when appropriate, incorporate non-textile objects essential to her storytelling process. The cultural significance, narrative, aesthetic, and technical qualities of traditional textiles and clothing, particularly those of the African diaspora, heavily influence her work. She has traveled to 44 countries researching and collecting indigenous textile and clothing. Precious work has been exhibited in the US and internationally. So, with you all, my dear friend, Precious Lovell. So, Precious, I I wanted to talk to you about Denim, and I know this is a conversation that you had before. Precious, are you there? Can I? Are you listening to me? Let's see. Mm,
Okay. I was disconnected trying to tell you I was disconnected. I heard you. So thank you for that lovely introduction. I don't exactly know what happened, but I'm here now.
Great, thank you. That's the important thing. So I was um, thinking, like, one of the things that I always um, in my vision of you is
Hmm.
denim. Denim is one of those um, pieces that you always have in your garment, in your
Hmm.
daily wear. So why denim? And I know that we are the kind of designers that we dress and we have a message on how we dress.
Hmm.
So can you explain me a little about why the love for denim from you?
I think my love from denim comes directly from the dye that's used to make it, indigo. And as you know, people of African descent have a long history with indigo. And I've said this, many, many times. People are probably tired of me saying it, but in northern Nigeria, the Kano dye mills have been around at least since 1498, and probably a little bit longer. But there's an official sign from that date. But it also has to do with me being someone from the southern United States. I'm from North Carolina, and as you know, South Carolina had a tremendous indigo industry in the 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to conferences and different things where people talked about indigo, and they always credited the indigo industry in South Carolina to a 15 or 16-year-old young English girl named Eliza Pinckney. Her father had plantations in the Caribbean, and they had one in South Carolina, and she was a horticulturalist, and they said that, she created this whole industry, but they never mentioned that these West African enslaved people on this plantation brought indigo cultivation with them. And so for reasons like that, that's one of the reasons that I absolutely, love denim. And also I love the casualness of denim for the most part. So that's sort of my love for denim is really about indigo.
Thank you. For many years, I never wore denim because it takes a lot of water to process. And water, I think, is going to be the next big fight. So that was my concern. Can you now navigate us through the history of denim? And one of the things that is very passionate for you and me, that the civil rights, and as a part of the African diaspora, we are always in conversation. So can you guide us a little about your research?
Well, I'm going to try and get through this. We'll see how well it goes, how well I remember all of it. But from what I understand, denim is a twill weave, and it originated in a French city called Nimes. So it was Denims. So that's sort of where the weave of denim came from. But again, we know that it was dyed with indigo. And indigo is a pigment that doesn't absorb into the fabric, but actually lays on the surface. So you may have bought jeans and worn them and the blue rubbed off or something like that, or you wash them and there's lots of blue dye in the wash water. Well, those are some of the reasons why. But when it comes to the civil rights movement, I think you have to go back a little bit further to enslavement to really understand how denim became so important to the civil rights movement. So I think about a few things. I think about how cloth and clothing, we're both designers, we know about the ways that how we dress can inform perception, right?
Correct.
So, on plantations, there were sumptuary laws. Enslaved people were not allowed to wear certain things. Enslaved people who worked in the big house wore different things than people who worked in the field. So that right there was the beginning of divide and conquer among people of African descent. So we think about the Tignon laws in Louisiana, where if you were a woman of color, you had to cover your hair. But you also think about how we went, okay, we'll cover it, but we're going to make it the most fabulous head wrap you've ever seen. So it didn't really work in preventing.
It's a crown.
Right. Women from drawing attention. So when you think about the way that clothing was used on plantations, people of African descent understood that there was this power in clothing, in the way someone dressed, all of that kind of stuff. I always think about the film Django Unchained, when Jamie Foxx, got to choose his first outfit. He had on this blue velvet, knicker outfit, and everybody sort of laughed in the film. And I said, but you know what? The reason he chose that was because there was probably a painting of Blue Boy, I think it was in Gainsborough, whoever painted it, on the wall, and he always heard people talking about how amazing this painting was. So the first chance he got to choose what he wore, he chose something that he knew was associated with status and something important. So it really was a significant moment in that film.
Yeah, and it goes back to the most simple reason of why we dress. Status.
Yes. Status. Absolutely. Absolutely. I always say that clothing is one of our most intimate relationships. It's something that every morning we get up and we think about, how we're going to present ourselves to the world today. And that's exactly what was so important in the civil rights movement with regard to what people wore. So I think you have some images there.
Yes.
Okay. So you want to pop up image number 1?
Yes. I will do that. So I have an old school way.
There you go. Okay, perfect. Okay, back it up closer to you so we can get all the images in. Come back. Perfect, right there. So this image is of W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. W.B. Du Bois. And you can see him from a young age all the way through to his later years. And Dr. Du Bois, he was a Pan-Africanist. He was a scholar. He was a sociologist, a civil rights activist. He was the first African-American to get a PhD from Harvard, and he was one of the founders of the NAACP. But what's so significant about these images is that, as you can see, appearance was extremely of great importance to Dr. Du Bois. Now, that image you see there with the top hat is of Dr. Du Bois at the 1900 Paris Exposition. And he was the person who conceived the American Negro exhibition there. So, Nasheli, let's see number 2 image. Okay, back that up a little bit towards you. Perfect. All right, so now these are the types of images that Dr. Du Bois included in the exposition. So as you can see, they are, they're some of them are staged, but they're images of Black people. This is 1900s, okay? So remember, 1865 was when they found out in Texas that enslavement had been abolished. And you see that they're all finely dressed, very distinguished looking, living these American lives, or the dream of whatever the American life may have been or may still be. But you can see that these images, they're college students, they look as if they are upper class, and they have these, what was at that point a nuclear family. So these were the kind of images that were included in the exposition, and this is what, we have come to call Sunday best. So everyone was wearing their Sunday best.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something, that we still, that's still a part of African American experience. You think about on Sundays, you go to church, and women, women and men, but women in particular are dressed to the nines. They got the church hat on.
I remember the first time in Georgia when I saw a church and everybody was all red or all yellow, and it was a whole experience. It was like a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
The pride on dressing.
There you go. It's still very much a part of the culture, very much a part of the culture. You want to pop up the next one? Okay. So let's back it up just a little bit. All right. So this is the Selma to Montgomery March from 1965. And Dr. King, which you see in the center there, he was one of the founders of SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He founded it with Ralph Abernathy, Bayard Rustin, remember that name, I'm going to come back to it, Fred Shuttlesworth, and John Lowry. These were all, except for Bayard Rustin, I think everybody else was a minister. And what they did was they mobilized people to march and protest, but always nonviolently. So in this image, you'll see, I'm trying to remember who everybody is. Coretta Scott King, Dr. King, Ralph Bunch. I think that's Ralph Abernathy's wife, Ralph Abernathy, and Rosa Parks. and on the other end it may be Fred Shuttlesworth, but I can't tell because of his head being turned. But all of these people were prominent in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and always on the front lines, usually during marches. But what's significant about this picture is the way that everyone is dressed. Everybody is wearing their Sunday best. The women have on jewelry, they're carrying handbags, the men have on suits and ties. I mean, for me, that does not look like a fun time out marching, perhaps having to run, perhaps having to do, all kinds of things because it was unknown what would happen at a march. So the reason I want to talk about Sunday best right here is because Rosa Parks, who's in that image, and I think she has a handbag in her hand. I think that was one of the things in a whitish dress. Yeah, right there. So, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus, and she sort of became one of the faces for the civil rights movement. But what many people don't know is that before Rosa Parks refused, there was a 15-year-old girl named Claudette Colvin who also refused to give up her seat on a bus. But Colvin was poor, and after she refused to give up her seat, she became pregnant. And so the powers that be in the civil rights movement did not think that she was the appropriate image for the movement. And that's how Rosa Parks, who actually was not the first person to do it, became the image, because she was a dressmaker, she dressed conservatively, and they thought she was a more appropriate representative for the movement.
That is a lot. We will need to break it down. Mm-hmm. That is very complicated.
Yeah. But really, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's really about, the idea of which I'll get to, about respectability politics. It's about, people were trying to show that they were as, don't even get me started on what's about to come out of my mouth, but they were as, good as dominant culture. Yeah. That was something they were trying to assimilate, become a part of. Yes, worthy. Worthy is the best word. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. So, we know how that has worked out, but that's another talk for another day. But yeah, so that's really what it was about. When you went out to march, you went out to present the best that you had to offer, to make this point of being worthy, of being someone who should get the job, someone who should be treated equally. That's what that was all about.
Yes.
All right. Sure. All right.
What about this one?
Yeah, I really like this image. Although it's not the one with Coretta Scott King and Juanita Abernathy is not a happy one. They are coming out of the Birmingham jail after Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy were arrested, and the man between them is Shuttlesworth, another minister, part of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But look at the way those two women are dressed. Would you look at that? They had just visited their husbands in jail, but there are pearls, there are gloves, there are purses, and looks like an untied pussy bow shirt and a little bit of everything, the sunglasses. So as I said before, this air of respectability was never, ever let go. You always, no matter what you were doing, you always looked your best. Then the other image of the three men is Dr. King, Ralph Abernathy, and this is the one of Bayard Rustin. Now, everybody's, reflecting that air of respectability. They're in the uniform of the civil rights movement. Women dressed to the nines, men dressed to the nines. That's just how it was. They have on fedoras, they have on suit and tie, the men. That was what you did. Now, in these two images, Shuttlesworth and Bayard Rustin do not have on hats, but, that's just one moment, one example. But I want you to put the picture up of the three men, because I want to talk about that same one, about Bayard Rustin. I want to give him his props, and I'll tell you why. In 2013, Barack Obama posthumously gave him the Presidential Medal of Honor. He was one of Dr. King's closest confidants. He organized the 1963 March on Washington. He participated in freedom rides when he was young, and he was a proponent of nonviolence resistance. But what I think a lot of people don't know is that he was an openly gay man, and I imagine that him getting through the civil rights movement and working the civil rights movement was probably a lot more difficult than a lot of other people. I shouldn't say that. I can't judge anybody. But, Dr. King totally respected him, totally trusted him, and I just wanted to give him his props. All right.
This one.
Yeah. Okay.
We see some action here.
We see some action there. So again, we're talking about the politics of respectability. When you look at these images, people were still dressed regardless of what they faced as protesters. So you can see the two women with their dresses on. One's holding onto her purse as she's being carried away. The other one has her belt. They're these fitted shirt dresses. And, they were not going to not go out looking their best. The two men in the middle are being attacked by dogs. Their clothes are being ripped from their bodies, but they're still, he's got his hat on and his pant leg is being ripped off. They still have their, respectability, their respectable clothes on, going through something like this.
And I think it's also about I'm still a human. You are dehumanizing. The whole structure has been created to dehumanize us as people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was going back to why we dress.
Yeah.
And it's that humanity, that preservation, self-preservation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So this image was taken by a photographer named Steve Shapiro, and it was one of these Selma to Montgomery marches. And you can see I'm sure you see people that in this march. You can see John Lewis, who became a congressman, who was, beaten multiple times as he marched with Dr. King. There's Ralph Abernathy. Then there is, I got to remember his name. Reverend Jesse Douglas in the sunglasses, and James Foreman. If you'll notice James Foreman, he's dressed a little differently. He has on a tie, a shirt, tie, and a jacket, but look what he's wearing underneath. He's got on a pair of overalls. So he was a member of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So you can see that something has changed just a bit in this image because he's wearing overalls.
So then we see the workers. The workers
Mm-hmm.
are coming
Mm-hmm.
to the conversation, to the table.
And there's a reason for that. So if you want to put up the next image. So this image is of this, mostly of SNCC, but it's the March on Washington. And I do want to mention this wonderful book. I'm going to just try to hold it up. It's called Liberated Threads, and it's by Tanisha Ford. Brilliant book on, it's basically about women, but on civil rights and protests. So, this image, you'll notice that everybody is wearing denim and overalls. So SNCC was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were also, as I said, nonviolent, but what they came to realize as time went on, that this idea of respectability, it wasn't making their lives any better. It wasn't saving them from getting beaten. It wasn't doing any of that. So they sort of turned the tide and decided to identify with the working class Black people, where it had been associated with middle class Blacks before. So now they're aligning themselves with people, the wage laborers and people like sharecroppers and those sort of things. So the whole thing sort of changed there with the young people. They decided, wait a minute, everybody is a part of this struggle, and not just middle class people, not just educated people like Dr. King and his colleagues. So, so we see all of this denim at the March on Washington, the 1963 March on Washington. And this, yes, thank you for pulling in on Stokely Carmichael. So he became chairman of SNCC, I think in 1966, something like that. Don't quote me on that date. And he eventually rejected, well, I don't know if he rejected it, but he distanced himself from nonviolence and became a member of the Black Panther Party. And he's also credited with coining the phrase Black Power. So the whole movement was always evolutionary, and people went back and forth, and their minds changed, and they aligned themselves with different people over time. Would you go to the corner with the two young women, the opposite upper corner? Yes. So these two young women are their sisters, and it's Dory and Joyce Ladner. And they grew up in Mississippi, and when they were young, they were activists with the NAACP. And as time went on, they became members of SNCC and were at the March on Washington. And as you can see, they're wearing their overalls also. And you will see that, oh, I can't remember which sister it is, has a short afro also. I think that is Dory, if I'm not mistaken. So you can see how, everything is sort of changing. If you look at the images before and then look at these images, you can see that there has been a whole sort of shift in consciousness. And that's what happened in the movement. So it became more inclusive of everyone.
Yeah, and also is a way of connecting
Absolutely.
other groups. This is not only a Black cause. This is a whole economic
poor people. Exactly.
Poor people.
Absolutely. And that's what the March on Washington was about. It was about poor people. So I should say that. So then I think our last image. Okay. So in this last image, look who's wearing denim. So at this point, Dr. King is now wearing denim. You can see him in the one image. The other image, Nasheli, he's got on these overalls. And this was when he was in Birmingham, and in 1963, and he asked the people in Birmingham to wear denim with him through Easter as a means of connecting to laborers. The other image, and that you can see he's standing in a church in that one. The other image is Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy. They had been told that they could not have this protest in Birmingham, Alabama. But what they decided to do was they wore denim. You can see Dr. King's got his cuffs fashionably turned up. Ralph Abernathy does too, but not quite so much. And this was them, conducting this march, even though they were told it was illegal. And they were eventually arrested. But look at what's happening at that image behind them. Look at those men. You see them all kneeling there? So when I think about Colin Kaepernick, I'm wondering, had he seen this image? Had this meant something to him when he started kneeling in protest also? So this image, was the protest where they were arrested in Birmingham. And this is where Dr. King wrote his famous letter from Birmingham jail. So you can see how all of this, how denim became an integral part of the civil rights movement in order to become more inclusive and include people who were laborers, who were still working in fields, who were, working in hotels, who were doing all of these things where it was not appropriate to be dressed up all the time. And that's sort of, that's sort of how this all happened. That's sort of how it all comes together.
How do you think we are now using denim?
Oh, Lord. Well, I use it every day almost. It's sort of my uniform, my personal uniform, but for different reasons. But I think you and I had a brief conversation about Denim Days, which just happened. It happens once a year, and it happened on April 26th. And I think that's so because Denim Days originated in Italy, where a young woman, I think she was 18 years old, was taking driving lessons, and she had been raped by her driving instructor. And this was in 1992. And he told her, if you tell anyone, I'll kill you. But she told her parents, they prosecuted. He was convicted. He appealed and said her jeans were so tight that there's no way I could have gotten them off without her help. And the court freed him. But then it was appealed again. But Italian women in the government decided to start wearing jeans to support women survivors. So it's still been going on since 1992, and it happens in April, one day in April every year, where women wear denim to work in support of women's rape survivors and just rape, sexual violence victims, people who have been sexually violated. So I think that's one way that denim is used today. Do you have other ideas of about how it's used today?
So I have a comment here, sorry.
Okay.
In Puerto Rico and DR in Dominican Republic are the only countries that call denim mahon. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We saw that is another person that have that create different reels, and she was saying that in Puerto Rico they started using mahon because the cargo where they come from was mahon. It was in a place that called mahon. So in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, they keep using it instead of mezclilla. That is the name of the fiber in the textile in Latin America. We use mahon.
Okay.
So I want to have, if somebody have questions, you can put it in the chat. We're going to have 5 more minutes, and we're going to be closing this session. We have another one coming. Please set your reminder so you can hear more about how fashion has empowered communities, and specifically communities of color. The next one is the beret. Can you tell us a little about that one?
Oh Lord, just tune in. You'll find out all about the beret and sort of how it became we won't say a clothing, but an accessory of resistance. That's the best way to say it. An accessory of resistance in several different forms.
Thank you. I need to say about denim. I think I keep using denim when I need to go to spaces of high elite people to identify me with the workers movement. So I think I use it that way. And in Puerto Rico, we use a lot of denim, and we use a lot of t-shirts. Puerto Rico using the body as this billboard is a very used thing, and I can post some photos of great t-shirts from Puerto Rico.
And I think the t-shirt has been used in that way in many places. And one of the interesting things that in Africa, cloth is sort of used that way. So the printed cloth can be used as a tool of resistance also, and tell the message and be used for political advertisements and things like that in similar ways that we use t-shirts in other places.
Oh, one of our fashion designers for a fashion show on May 19th, Buenas Vibras Apparel, is asking, are there healthier ways to make denim?
Yeah, well, there are healthier ways in that the base of most denim is cotton. So organic cotton, but still there's water. There's water. At least it doesn't have the chemicals and pesticides in it, but you're still dealing with water. And organic indigo, which, you know, the thing is, all of those things in the world of manufacturing are more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that they actually are. Do you know how, you know, when you make something about being green or sustainable, the
Mm-hmm.
price goes up, but I don't know that actually the price should go up because, I mean, organic into that, you can use bananas and, you know, some sort of sugar and some sort of this and the organic indigo. So those are ways that it could be made, you know, better, but you still got you water. You use a lot of
Mm-hmm.
water. That's the
Yes,
thing.
correct.
You have
So
to offset the
recycle,
water.
reusing. I know you reuse a lot of denim and to recreate garments. So that is another way. And
Yeah,
just not throw away stuff.
yeah.
This is not,
Keep.
yeah.
I have. I don't know when I have thrown away denim. I cut it up and make coats. I cut it up and make bags. I just redo it. Like this denim shirt I have on, the sleeve is made from a different denim than the body because I didn't have enough of one, so I just used another piece of denim. So you know, upcycling is always a really, really good way to do it. And you can go to a thrift store and buy, you know, a pair of jeans for $3.95 and, you know, make whatever you want. We don't really need any more clothes on this earth, but I know that's not going to stop. So we just have to figure out ways to be more thoughtful about it.
Yes, and it is the at the end is affecting our communities. Is ending up in Haiti. Is ending up in Chile. So
Ghana has like the Ghana, India. I mean, just incredible, incredible amounts of used clothing. You know, I always say this, when you give to Goodwill, they only sell about 20% of it in the store. The rest they sell, you know, and these countries will buy these bales, and then the bale gets there, and there's only a small amount of that can be used, and the rest gets
mhm.
discarded. So we really have to think about that. And I can't remember the details. I'm getting ready to mess this up. But there were three East African countries who had decided not to let the U.S. Send used clothing there anymore. And the U.S. bullied them and said, well, if you won't let us do this, then we'll cut you off from A, B, C, D, E. And so, you know, people can't even stand up when they know that something is wrong because the bigger person, you know, the more powerful person will punish you.
Yeah, and I have another question here. How can we shop and show people how to shop because sustainable is more expensive?
Um, I'm not sure. Do you mean what other ways can you shop? Is that what you're asking?
How I think we can educate people how to buy sustainable because it's more expensive.
Okay, so there's one website called, oh boy, I think it's called Good for You, something like that. You can go in there and you can type in the name of a company, and they will tell you how that company is rated on sustainability, on transparency, on all kinds of things. It's good for something, good for you, I think. So there are online resources that you can use to find out some information about certain companies. And you have to be really careful because, you know, it's all become a buzzword now. And so you have to do your research. You have to do your research
Yeah, and I
because
think, yeah, and I think one of the things about sustainability that always bothered me is that this is a new wide way of doing what we used to do all the
oh,
time, you know? As in our communities, we have always recycled, we have always been, we use the fabric until like you use it until you clean for the counter, you know?
because
So,
you had to survive. You could not do that. You had
yes.
to. You had to.
So it's very interesting those buzzwords, those
Yep.
trend words.
Mm-hmm.
And then, how should we recycle denim? That is another question.
Just keep using it, keep upcycling it, keep doing all that stuff. You know, that's, I mean, really, if you, there, you should find a place that takes denim. If there are places that take denim, you know, Eileen Fisher says, give me all, when you're finished with my clothes, give them back to me. So there are companies that recycle textiles. So you can look into those. But, you know, my thing is just keep wearing it until it falls apart if you can. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
know that is so anti-capitalist, so anti-fashion when you really think about fashion, because it's about something new, something new, something new, something new, you know, wear it once.
Yes.
I can only be seen on Instagram one time wearing this outfit, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, we all just have to learn to be more conscious.
Yes.
And
And
someone just said something about the young always received what the old wore. That's brilliant. That's exactly what happened. You know, my mother's older sister told me when they were little, their mom would take her coat and then redo it a little bit to give to my mom. So that's just how it was. That's, you know, you had very little clothing, but you wore it and you passed it down.
well, we are going to keep identifying how we're going to wear denim and how we're going to be disruptive with how we wear and the messages that
Mm-hmm.
we bring to the table with how we present ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Can
And
I say
we
one
are
last
going to,
thing?
yes, of
And
course.
let's just
Yeah,
stop buying
one
so
more.
much.
Let's
Oh,
stop buying so much. Yeah, I think somebody said that maybe
yes,
not consume as much. So
absolutely.
and that is very important that we celebrate to repeat clothes and to say this clothes was from my auntie. I
Mm-hmm.
think that brings story and that honor our ancestors.
Absolutely. I agree
So
100%.
I see you next week in our next talk about decorates. And thank you, Precious. Have a
You.
good night, everybody. Remember, last fashion talks next week, and we hope to see you in El Fashion Show on May 19th. Have a
All
beautiful
right,
night.
everybody.
Take
Good night.
care.